you're a leader and work for a startup and you've just been asked to create a budget for your department and you don't know where to start, you're not alone. In this video, I'm going to walk through how to budget for your area of the business, whether that's marketing, operations, or product, or anything else, in a way that actually supports your company goals. So we're just going to go through your steps so that you can implement these immediately, essentially. My name's Alysha Randall and I'm a fractional CFO for Fast Growth Consulting, and I focus on startups and scale-ups, and I work with leadership teams on a daily basis. The first step for you is to start with the strategic goals. But before you even touch a spreadsheet or start writing down costs or anything like that, you need to make sure you're really clear on what the company wants to achieve. So these goals, there's usually about 3 to 5 goals. You were probably part of the conversation in establishing what they were. If not, that's fine. You may have a founder that establishes the strategy and then the rest of the leadership team make sure they implement it. But ideally, you should know what they are. So if you don't know what they are, reach out to your founder and ask them what are the strategic goals for the business for the next 12 to 36 months. So it might be something like we want to hit 100,000 MRR. It might be we want to get the gross margin down to this percentage. It might be we want to break even. It might be getting to a Series A in the next 12 months. It might be non-financial, so things like we want our customer service level to be at this point, we want to have this many customers, we want to be the market leader in this product. It's usually a combination of financial and non-financial goals. And as I said, there's usually about 3 to 5. So once you know what they are, you want to work out then how you and your department can support these big strategic goals. So once you understand what the strategic goals are, you need to then translate that into business goals or operational goals for your area. So what is your team responsible for, and how can they help the company deliver those strategic targets? So for example, if you're in marketing, it might be we need to bring in 500 qualified leads per month to get to that bigger goal. If you're in operations, it might be we need to improve the onboarding speed to support customer retention. If we're in product, it might be we need to deliver a key feature by Q2, which will increase conversion. So work out what are those operational goals. There may be say 2 or 3 that you really want to focus on. Sometimes they're quarterly. So if you have the OKR framework within your company, not a lot of startups do, but if you do, then it would be your OKRs. So you may want to look at the next 12 months, the time frame of the next 12 months, and map out what you think you and your team can deliver each quarter to achieve those bigger goals. And be quite realistic here, because it may be step changes. So if, say, for example, your team currently, let's focus on marketing because it's easy. So easy isn't easy to talk about. Not easy to do. I'm not a marketer. So if, say, for example, your marketing team are bringing in about 150 qualified leads per month, and you want to increase to 500. You're not going to go from 0 to hero overnight. So in December, if you were doing 150 per month, you're not going to deliver 500 by January. You need to work out what the step changes are for each month. So it might be, say, 250 in Q1. It might be, say, 350 in Q2, 400 by Q3 and 500 by Q4. So it may be a step change like that. So work out what it is. You may just have a whiteboard and just write it all down, or the equivalent of an online whiteboard. It also might be worthwhile working with your number 2. So get your number 2 in a meeting room, have an hour or 2 of just planning out what you think is realistic. Now, part of that planning is you need to map out what you need in order to deliver that. So it's all well and good saying, oh, we're doing 150 qualified leads today. By January, we want to do 250 qualified, 350 by Q2. It's great writing that, putting that down. But by writing that down as this is the goals for us, it doesn't mean you're going to achieve that, even with a step change. You obviously need an action plan to get to that level. So if you are planning on increasing from 150 to 250, what do you need to be able to do that? Is it you need additional headcount? Is it you need additional tools or additional systems in order to do that? Is it that you need some agencies or freelancers or support services to do that? Is it that you need to look at different campaigns or content budgets? Or do you need training or some sort of enablement in order to increase? There obviously is going to be a situation where you need to test different things or change the way you work, and therefore the additional resources, as in time and money and headcount, isn't needed. But you do need to map out all of the different things you need in order to achieve those goals. And again, be realistic here. If you think that the team can change the way that they're working, a little bit of training, you can get from 150 to 250. So not too much additional spend there. But to get to, say, from 250 to 350, you need to increase your efficiency. And that may be tools or systems. It may be additional tech in order to do that. Your go-to shouldn't be headcount. I'm talking as a CFO here. If someone comes to me and says, oh, in order for me to get from 150 to 500, I need an additional 10 headcount, I'm going to say, go back to the drawing board. So just be aware of that when you're preparing for a CFO. So you do want to think about all of the different things. You want your existing team to be as efficient as possible. You want to try different processes to make sure that you're as slick as possible. You want to automate it as much as you can, which means you need additional tools or systems. And then once you've got this slick machine working, then you can throw some headcount at it. So think about how you can do all of those different step changes to get to where you need to be. And then once you know that, then you can start adding some numbers to it. So the next stage is then breaking that down between fixed and variable cost. So fixed costs are things that you have to pay for no matter what, and variable things are things that change depending on volume. So fixed cost is easier to think about. The most common one, of course, is headcount. So if you are hiring a sales team or a tech team or additional operators, you need to pay their salaries, and then as a rough guideline, you need to add 20% on top of the salary. Some countries are lower, some countries are higher. So in the UK, it's roughly 20%. In the US, I'd say 10 to 15%. In continental Europe, it's probably closer to 35%. These are the additional costs of having employees, such as pension costs, social costs, health insurance, all those different things, taxes, of course. So they're your fixed costs. So it doesn't matter what the revenue is. If you've hired this person and they're part of your payroll, you have to pay for them. Other things are like subscriptions, software subscriptions. There's a bit of a nuance there, but in general, software subscriptions are pretty fixed. And then other things are like your fixed costs, like rent and insurance and all those kinds of things. So they're your fixed costs. Then there's variable costs, and this is when it changes, depends on volume. So if you're in marketing, you will know variable costs quite well because ad spend, PPC spend, those kind of things are variable depending on volume. So that can really go up and down depending on what you're doing. The other things are costs that you need in order to fulfill your customers. So for example, if you are an author like me, the more books you print and more revenue you make, but your printing costs go through the roof. If you have a 3PL, so you have a third party that does all of the fulfillment for you for products in particular, the more revenue you have, the more you have to pay in fulfillment costs. If you're in sales and your sales team keep hitting their targets, then you're going to have to pay more commissions. And if you have more contractors, you're going to have more. So that's your variable spend. So you do need to think about, and it just helps when you're having the conversations with your CFO or your FP&A, so the person that's managing the budget. They will want to know if costs are fixed or variable because it helps them with their modeling. So you need to understand what is fixed and what is variable. The next one is assumptions and dependencies. So as a CFO, I spend most of my time worrying about, looking at, reviewing all of the assumptions and dependencies within the budget. That is where I'm spending all of my time. So you may want to think about, while you're looking at how you want to spend, you may want to think about at what point do you need to hire someone. So for example, going back to that marketing Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Let's say, for example, Q1, we want to change the processes and improve the efficiency of the marketing team. Q2, we want to implement a new software to automate a lot of what the team is doing once we've got a good process. Please don't do it the other way around. And then Q3 is we're hiring new people to work with these slick processes and this slick automation software. So that is your dependency. You're not going to hire new people in Q3 until you've got a slick process and the software has been fully implemented. So that may be one of your dependencies. So you can flag, I'm not going to hire someone until these two things are done. I expect them to be done by the end of Q2, but obviously it's not guaranteed. It may also be revenue based. So you may say, particularly in sales, for example, we're not going to hire additional headcount until we get to this level of revenue, for example. And then tech may be exactly the same. We're not going to hire people until there is a need for this particular project to be done. So you do need to make sure that you understand what the assumptions are and dependencies are. Sometimes the assumptions may be, and so again, back to that marketing assumption, is if we change the processes, we expect to get to 250 qualified leads per month. That is an assumption. So we're assuming that we're able to get there. And then when we put in the software, we're assuming that we can get to 350. Now, obviously time will tell. We're aiming for 250, we're aiming for 350, but that may not come to fruition. Again, this is something that we need to know, because at the end of Q1, if you've implemented all the processes and your qualified leads per month is plus or minus the 250, so it may be say 350, maybe like these changing processes, we've blown it out of the park, this is amazing. Or actually we've only increased by 50, we've only got to 200. The finance team in particular and the board and the founder will also want to know those things. They want to know that the assumptions we've made are inaccurate. Actually, it's this. We're going to have to roll that out throughout the whole budget. So make sure you're very clear on what your assumptions are. You're very clear on what your dependencies are, and that you communicate those things both with the founder, the board, if necessary, if material, and with your finance team. Even though that's a lot of stuff, you do want to keep everything that you want to communicate simple. So clearly state, potentially in a Google Sheet, and I will have an example here. These are the operational goals that we want. These are the things that we need. These are my assumptions, and these are my dependencies. So ideally, one row per cost, split it monthly or quarterly, ideally monthly, just because the finance team, they do have to report on a monthly basis. So if you say quarterly, they'll want to know which month. You want clear labels, totals at the bottom if relevant, and maybe a summary at the top if relevant. But here is like a clear communication to the finance function on exactly what you want. Obviously, they'll come back to you and ask for more information if they need it. They may ask something, for example, oh, here I can see that you want to hire additional people in Q3. Are you planning on hiring that internally? Do you think you can get these people from the network? Or do we have to go to a recruitment agent and pay to hire these people? That's a perfect example of a question a finance person might ask, because they want to know if there's additional costs in hiring this person or not. Another one may be, oh, when we onboard these people in Q3, how quickly will they be able to make an impact? Because they may be modeling that as well. So really make it as clear as possible, and then try and put all of these things within your budget requirements. Some finance functions, particularly if they have an FP&A, which is the person that just does budgeting, it's what we call that kind of role, they may send you a template and you just fill in the gaps. And that makes it easier for them to upload it, particularly if they have a budgeting software already. They'll be able to upload this template in. If they don't have a template, then you can create something that just looks like this, just so it's easy. But as you can see, there's a lot of thinking and planning that goes in beforehand. So if you receive a template from the finance function and say, I need you to fill this out, great, but don't just do this 24 hours before it's due. You do need to start a good month before, so that you understand strategic goals, operational goals, and the resources that you need in order to hit those operational goals. Once your budget has been approved, you need to own it. So you need to review it on a monthly basis. So really track what you've spent, and then versus what you've planned to do. Your finance team will want to know why there are over and unders. So if you've overspent, you need to be ready to explain why. And if you've underspent, look at where you could potentially reallocate it or have it banked. So actually it costs less, bonus. So this is where you really do need to be heavily involved. And as a leadership team, especially if you're a senior leadership team, is expected of you. So if you're a junior leader, particularly in startups generally, leaders are quite junior, you don't want to just think like a manager, you want to think like a leader. So own that. As a leadership team, essentially you own the entire P&L. And I've talked about that in prior videos. So this is the third video of a leadership team series, startup leadership team series. So if you want to know why you need to own the numbers, and when the finance team sends you the monthly management accounts, what should you be looking at, then take a look at those videos above and below. But essentially, you really do need to own your spend. So I very much recognize that plans change, particularly in a startup. So businesses always pivot, there's new projects, there's new opportunities, there's new risks. So things do change. So what you potentially planned, say in December for the new financial year, may be out of date in 3 months or 6 months, and that's fine. But you just need to have that conversation and understand that the resource allocations, ideally, if you're overspending, it's because of a future benefit. So the return on the investment is going to be the same. But if you keep overspending and you're not getting the same results as what you expected, there's a bit of a problem and you need to work through that. So building a budget for your area of the business isn't great about being spreadsheets. Actually, it's about showing how your team contributes to the growth and how you're planning for that, and then keeping your eyes wide open, particularly as you can see how it's tracking. So start with strategy, map out what your team needs to deliver, keep it clean, realistic, and aligned with what the business is planning to achieve, and you'll be kicking plenty of goals. So if your team needs help creating budgets and aligning to the broader business, this is where we can help. This is exactly what Fast Growth Consulting can do. So if you want to check out the links below, and potentially we can help you with you and your team's budget. So thanks so much for watching. As I said, this is the third video of the Startup Leadership series. So take a look at those, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.